No. Try to be honest.
Hi.
Hi, Pnina. Sorry, I was on mute. So I didn't realise I was on mute.
Don't worry.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Pnina. We're just going to give it a few minutes for people
Sure.
to keep joining.
Sure. Is the sound okay? You can hear me fine?
I can hear you fine. If everyone else can mute, and then there's no background noise,
Yeah.
that
Okay,
will
great.
help as well. I will mute myself once I've kind of introduced you.
Sure. The only thing is, I want to share my screen. Do I need permission for that or?
Oh, 1 minute. So I have been given admin rights. So I'm actually on my phone on this Zoom just because I've been on my computer all day. I thought I'd changed the screen. Let me just see.
I'll try and check because maybe it will work. Oh,
Okay.
it seems to be allowing me.
Okay, that's good.
We'll just check it now and then. Oh, yeah, you can see.
Yes, we can see. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, I'll give it 1 more minute, but it would be nice to start on time given that you're here.
It's okay, I don't mind waiting a couple of minutes.
We'll wait always a couple of minutes. To be honest, I don't know. There wasn't I don't know who's coming, who had planned to come, but it looks like already we've got 15 people, which is good. So we'll give it a few more minutes.
I'm letting people in as they come into the waiting room.
Oh, thanks, Marion. I thought they just came in. Didn't realise that you had to do it there. So thank you. And Pnina, just to say, I'd probably have to leave a little bit before the end, but Marion will be here till the end. Okay, should we make a start? So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at this share with Pnina. Pnina, thank you so much. I realise it's 10 o'clock at night for you, so really appreciate you making the time to give us a share on what looks like a really interesting topic. I know I'm really keen to hear about it. So just to introduce Pnina, who many of us know because she used to live in Edgware, but in case you didn't know who she was, I'm just going to read what Pnina talks about on her on her webpage. So Pnina describes herself as passionate about learning from ancient texts, understanding the modern messages within the text of Tanakh. She loves sharing her ideas with others, helping them to engage and connect with Jewish heritage and religion. She's worked in education in London for 9 years, teaching in high schools and in local communities. She's a graduate of the Chief Rabbi's Mayam program to create female educators and role models in the community. She's also a graduate from the Advanced Tanakh program at Matan in Yerushalayim and the Susie Bradfield Educational Leadership program at LSJS in London. In the summer of 2022, Pnina made Aliyah with her husband and 3 daughters from Ramat Bet Shemesh. And I know, Pnina, you've moved on from Ramat Bet Shemesh, but I can't remember exactly where it is that you've moved to, but you can share that if you want. And you teach at local high schools or panot and seminaries in Israel, as well as being a tour guide at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. So, Pnina, thank you so much for joining us and giving your share. And over to you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So I forgot what I'd written there. I should also say that the time difference works really well in my favor because I didn't have to rush through my kids' bedtime. I could calmly get them to sleep and be able to log on here later in the evening. So that's quite useful. And in answer to your question, yes, we moved in the summer to a new neighborhood called Karmei Nadiv in Kiryat Malachi, which is a bit closer to Ashdod, and thank God, very happy here. So thank you everyone for joining, and obviously this shares a refuah in the merit of a refuah shlema to Chana Malka Neshama Bat Aviva Dina, and please God, we should hear good news for her and for all of Klal Yisrael. Lots of people in need of our tefillot, so please God, this should be in a merit for everyone. So thank you very much. Again, I'm gonna, this is obviously going to be a share, but I'd love it to be interactive. Anyone who wants to turn on their cameras or ask questions at any point, you can write in the chat box or I guess raise your hand to ask a question or just unmute yourselves. Very happy to hear from people and hear questions as we go. And as Hadassah said, yes, this is a very interesting topic. It's one of those stories that's kind of less known, less talked about. The idea of Shaul HaMelech, the first king of the Jewish people, going to a witch. And first of all, we all kind of do a double take. Hold on, did she just say that? A witch? Witches exist? There are witches in Tanakh? You know, there's a lot of questions already just from the title of the shir. And hopefully I can shed some light on this. And give you also, like I said, I always try to make modern messages from the ancient texts of Tanakh. It's all relevant to us today in 2025. So the idea is also what message can we take from that into our lives today. And so I do have a PowerPoint. I'll share my sources as we go. I'm not gonna, you know, I won't always be sharing my screen because I know sometimes it can get a bit too much to be sharing with the screen share in the PowerPoint. So hopefully we'll do a bit of a mix. It's been a while since I've done a Zoom share, so just bear with me if I'm a bit slow at getting this to. Okay, hopefully everyone can see. And as we see in this picture, by the way, it's not just that Shaul goes to a witch. He goes to a witch for her to raise from the dead the prophet Samuel. Shmuel Hanavi has died by this point in the story, and the witch raises him from the dead to talk to Shaul. Again, making the story even more bizarre, and here is some sort of artistic rendition of what that might have looked like. So again, let's delve into the story. Now, as always with my shirim, I divide it into 3. And I split it into these 3 C's: the context, the background. We can't understand a story in Tanakh without looking at what's happening in the background in the time period. And also for here, I put in the halachic background of the story because we need to know what the Torah says about witchcraft and sorcery before we can understand this story in more depth. So first, we'll look at the context. Then we will look at the content, the story itself, what's actually going on. And we're going to read quite a few of the psukim, the verses inside from Sefer Shmuel Aleph. And then finally, we'll get to the concepts, the life lessons. What messages can we take from this story? And also, hopefully, in that final section, I'll be answering some of the questions that we're going to have from learning this story together. Okay, so that's the threefold structure of my shir. And at the end of each section, I'll try to stop to see if there's any questions on what I've said so far. But again, if people want to write out questions as we go, that's also an option. I'll do my best to look at that as we go too. So number one, we need to understand the halachic background. What does the Torah tell us about witchcraft? So in the Chumash, in Sefer Devarim, it's quite clear. It says that in Devarim, Perek Yudchet, chapter 18, it talks about when we get to the land of Israel. I'll read here on, let me see if I can, I haven't done this in a while, some sort of spotlight, there we go. Okay, here I'm reading in Pasuk Tet, Ki ata ba ela aretz asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha. When you come to the land that Hashem is going to give you, i.e. Eretz Israel, lo tilmad la'asot ketoevat hagoyim hahem. Don't learn from the non-Jews who live in the land. Don't copy their bad practices. And then it goes into a bit more detail what these practices are. Lo yimatzeh becha ma'avir bano bito be'esh. Don't pass your sons or daughters through fire, because that was one of these sorcerous pagan type of practices of actually, whether it's real child sacrifice or just passing them through the fire and they don't actually die, it's not clear, but it's certainly not something good. Kosem ksamim, ma'onen, umenhachesh, umachashef. Basically uses lots of different terms here to relate to different types of witchcraft and sorcery, and we don't have time to go into all the different types of categories and what they all mean, but it's clear that they're all outlawed by the Torah, and it carries on here. And this final one, someone who talks to the dead. Okay, someone who brings up these spirits and talks to the dead, it's clearly not allowed. Why? Because here in Yud Bet it says Ki tovat Hashem kol aseh eleh. This is abomination. This is abhorrent and very bad to Hashem, and it's clear that it should not be done. Now, you could say, but does this actually exist? Why is it outlawed? Well, there's different views, and again, this isn't a shir in witchcraft, so I can't go into it in so much detail, but certainly the fact that the Torah takes so many words to outlaw and clearly show that it's banned gives some proof or backing to the idea that it exists. Because why would the Torah take all these verses and all these words to say you can't do something if that thing didn't really exist, if there wasn't some sort of power to it? And certainly we believe that there is some element of black magic or something. There's some power to it, and we're not allowed to get involved in it, okay? If we then move on to our sort of second contextual point, that's the halachic element, that witchcraft is not allowed. Now we need to remind ourselves of the background of what's going on in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, chapter 28, which is when this story takes place. Now, first of all, we need to understand Shaul is the king. Shaul is one of the main characters of this story, really his essential character. Who is Shaul HaMelech? Shaul was the first king of Israel, anointed by Shmuel Hanavi. Samuel the prophet anointed him as king. And, you know, he's a very interesting character. He doesn't really want to be king. He's from the tribe of Binyamin. He hides his coronation. He makes some big mistakes quite early on. And he's actually viewed as this kind of tragic figure that's doomed to fail from the start, according to some. Or, according to others, he had great potential to be a king, but he just didn't live up to that potential. And tragically, he sort of becomes paranoid. He clearly suffers from some sort of depression, and he makes mistake after mistake. And really, things are not very good for him. At this point in the story where we're meeting him in chapter 28 of Shmuel Aleph, he is really very near the end of his life, and things are very bad for him at this point. And it's important for us to understand that background, for us to know the mental state that he's in as he enters into this story. So, and on top of that, what do we need to know? That our Perek Shmuel Aleph, Perek Kaf Chet, begins here in Pasuk Gimel, Shmuel met. That Shmuel, Samuel, the prophet, is dead. Now, we already know he's dead because his death was announced to us 3 parakim earlier in chapter 25. Why is it being repeated here? The Torah doesn't waste words. Sorry, the Tanakh, this is part of Nevi'im, but still, the Nevi'im, the Navi does not waste words. Why is it repeating here that Shmuel has already died? Because, again, that's a very important background to our story, because Shmuel anointed Shaul. Shaul's whole life, his whole career, I should say, as a king has been incredibly dependent on Shmuel the Navi, who anointed him, who gave him his kingship. And now without Shmuel, he's really struggling. Okay, and we see, so Shmuel's died, V'yispedulo kol Yisrael, all the people eulogized and mourned him, V'yikberuhu, and he had been buried. Okay, and what do we hear here? See here, our verse gives us 2 separate important background contextual points. Number 1 is that Shaul is dead. Number 2 comes here in the second part, Shaul hesir ha'avot ve'et hagidonim miha'aretz. That Shaul had removed all the sort of sorcerers from the land. He had taken away all the people who could speak to the dead, because Shaul knew that in Devarim, Perek Yudchet, it tells you are not allowed to do these types of things. So Shaul was keeping the Torah, and he removed all of these sorcerers, witches, whatever word you want to use. He had removed them from the land. Okay, so the background, we're sort of being prepared already that Shaul's maybe going to want to talk to Shmuel, who's dead, and it's a problem because there's no way for him to do that anymore. Okay, so the text already is preparing us for what's going to happen by giving us this kind of background. So that's sort of the background here, and I'll stop my screen share here. I just kind of to emphasize, so what's my point? So that's really context, that's introduction that I wanted to share, the first part of the context, okay? That Shmuel's dead and there's no witches in the land. Now, why is this so important? Because, like I said, Shmuel gave Shaul his kingship, and even though they didn't necessarily have the best relationship, even though Shaul doesn't always listen to Shmuel, if you go through the whole stories, all the stories in Shmuel Aleph, you'll see that it doesn't always work out so clearly between them, but still he is very dependent on him, and without him he feels lost, because without the Navi there is no way to communicate with God. The method, the framework of kingship, of Malchut in the Jewish people is that a king, a melech, has to work alongside a Navi, a prophet. The Navi is there to help the king connect with God, to help the king do the right thing, what the Torah wants him to do, because it's very easy for a king to get carried away with his power and think that all his authority comes from him, and to sort of forget about God and forget about the Torah. And the Navi is there to keep him on the straight path. And without Shmuel, Shaul feels really bereft, and he just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't feel like he can communicate with God, and he's really, really struggling. So that's the important background to our story. Are there any questions up till now? Okay, so in that case, let's go back to sharing our my PowerPoint here. We're back to sharing, and okay, I even created a slide I'd forgotten about. The summary of the context, like I said, witchcraft and sorcery is outlawed by the Torah, and Shaul, the first king of Israel, is struggling, and especially so now that Shmuel is dead. Okay, so let's go on to the second section, content. Now, here, to understand the story, we are going to read quite a few of the verses inside. I could just summarize it in my own words, but I think that would do an injustice to the verses of the Tanakh. You know, it's written there in detail, so it's good for us to go through it. Some of it I will summarize, but I'm putting the verses there for you on the screen so that you, I don't know, I don't think I'm making it up. You know, some parts of this story are so bizarre in a way that you might think that it's not really in Tanakh, but here you're going to see it's really, really, really part of Tanakh. Okay, so what happens? We're in, as always, as happens a lot throughout Shaul's time as king, the Plishtim are waging war on us. So in Pasuk Daled, it says here, V'yikbatzu Plishtim, Vivo vichanu b'shunam. Okay, so the Plishtim have gathered, and they've made a camp, a military, an army camp in Shunam. Okay, and v'yikvot Shaul v'et kol Yisrael v'yachanu b'Gilboa. Okay, and Shaul is encamped in Gilboa. Now, this is in the north, and actually, I'm going to because I love maps, and I feel like you can't really study Tanakh without a good map next to you. And I do have a map here, but it's not really possible for me to show it so easily where I'm talking about. And I've recently discovered a really great website with a map, so I want to share it with you, but I don't know how to. Oh, here, sorry. Let's change my screen share. Sorry, bear with me. This will be worth it because this is a great map, a great website. Also, I always say I don't want to just teach you to teach you, I want to give you skills and ways to go and find things out on your own. So this website, this is Hatanach. It's the Herzog's website, the Herzog Mechlelet Herzog, an incredible institution here in Israel, connected to Alon Shvut, the Gush Yeshiva, places like that. And they have this website with lots and lots of things on it. And you can actually go on this map and search by book which chapter. You can choose your book and your chapter, and it will show you on the map where these places are. Sorry. And here, so you can see we are in the north. You see here, don't let me this close, or you can zoom in a bit. Okay, we're in the north. And what's also really good here is you can actually overlay it with the modern map of Israel. And you can see, therefore, that we're talking about quite in the north, near Afula. Shunem, where the Plishtim are encamped, is near Afula. And Shaul has the Jewish people encamped here on Mount Gilboa, slightly to the south. Okay, I hope everyone can see where I'm pointing with my cursor. This is going to be really relevant soon. We're going to come back to this map in a bit. But there's where we are, just so you can understand sort of where in Israel we are. And let me change my screen. Okay, so there we're preparing for war. Shaul against the Plishtim. And what happens here, I'm back in my source in Pasuk Hey here, V'yar Shaul et machane Plishtim, v'yira v'chared libo ma'od. And Shaul saw the enemy camp, and he feared a great fearing. I mean, it doesn't just say and he was scared, it says that he was scared and he trembled, his heart trembled with fear. This is not how you want your king to be feeling on the eve of battle. He is very, very scared. And then Pasuk Vav, Yishal Shaul b'Hashem, v'lo anuhu Hashem. So Shaul asked Hashem for guidance. What should I do? Are we going to win this battle? Help me out here. Okay, it was very common to ask Hashem on the eve of a battle for some battle tactics or just some support, some guidance, and Hashem doesn't answer him. Gam b'chalomot, even in his dreams, he doesn't get anything from Hashem. Gam b'urim, okay, even through the urim atumim in the breastplate, the choshen, he doesn't get anything. Gam b'nevi'im, okay, even the Nevi'im. So there were other prophets after Shmuel died. We had other prophets. It wasn't that there were no prophets whatsoever for Shaul to speak to, but it wasn't Shmuel Hanavi. And it says here that he tried all these conventional methods. Okay, it lists 3 different conventional, allowed, legal, Torah methods of communication with Hashem, and Hashem is silent. There's no communication, and Shaul is bereft. He doesn't know what to do. He's panicking, he's scared, and God isn't speaking back to him. So this is what leads him in Pasuk Zayin to say, V'yomeh Shaul avadav, he speaks to his servants, B'kshuli eshet ba'alat ov, find for me a witch. Find for me a sorceress, and I will go to her, ve'edrasha, and I will request of her, v'yamru avodav elav, hine eshet ba'alat ov be'endor. Okay, and you think, hold on, this is a really drastic move. It's illegal according to the Torah, and he himself acted upon it by getting rid of any sorcerers that lived in the land. And here he is turning to his servants, asking them to find him someone. And what do you think they would say? Maybe, no, Your Majesty, are you sure this is what you want to do? Oh, but Your Majesty, none exist. No, they say, yeah, of course, there's one right around the corner in Endor. And the fact that they so quickly are able to find it, it's not like they say, oh, let us go and look and we'll come back later. They straight away know, which shows also that Shaul wasn't as successful as he thought he was getting rid of them, which also might also be kind of hinting to us a little bit about Shaul's authority and his kingship. Now I just want to tell you some. Oh no, we'll come back in a moment, maybe. No, let me show you something. Where is Endor? Okay, so let's go back to our map. Okay, can you see? Shaul is here. And Mount Gilboa with the Israelites, with the whole Jewish army. The enemy, the Plishtim, are here in Shunem, where I'm pointing to now. Where's Endor? Endor is even further north. What does this mean? That Shaul, on the eve of battle against a big enemy army, goes out and passes the enemy camp. He has to walk this way. Okay, he has to walk past Shunem in order to get to Endor. Maybe I should okay, he's here. Okay, in Mount Gilboa. To get here to Endor, he goes past Shunem. He's passing the enemy camp. It's baffling that a military leader, a king, would take that risk and leave his army on the eve of battle and go out for such a seemingly strange task. And it just doesn't seem to make sense. And I think this gives us a bit of an indication into his state of mind at this time, that Shaul is perhaps just really not thinking straight, and he's just not in a good mental state. And that's possibly what leads him to do this, or at least part of what leads him to do this. And again, that's why a map is so important for us when we're studying any part of Tanakh. So that's the map. Okay, let's go back to our source. So he goes out. Now, what does he do? Shaul disguises himself. Okay, yitchapes is a good word. We're coming up to Purim. My kids, who are now speaking Hebrew more than English, keep saying, what are you dressing up as? So yitchapes is the modern Hebrew word of dressing up. So Shaul dresses up. He changes his clothes to go out. Okay, v'yelech hu u'shnei anashim imo v'yivo el ha'isha laila. And he went with two men. Only two men, okay? Because he has to try and disguise himself. He doesn't want to draw attention to the fact that he's going out, he's the king. So he can't go out with a whole military bodyguard, royal guard. So he goes with just two men, and he comes to the woman at night. Now, it's interesting. Obviously, it could be that he's going at nighttime purely to try and avoid detection, to go under the cover of darkness. Rashi here actually says that it wasn't dark, it wasn't nighttime, but they were in such a dark place. It was as if it was the nighttime because they were so worried and things were so bad. Okay. And he goes to her and he says to her, I'll say this a bit in my own words. He goes to her and he basically says, I want you to bring someone back. I want you to do witch sorcery for me. And she says, no, I can't do this. Shaul has abandoned the use of ghosts and spirits. I can't do this. You're trying to get me killed. So it's ironic that she brings the name of Shaul. She doesn't know who she's speaking to. And what does he say? I've highlighted this in grey here. Vishava la Shaul b'Hashem le'mor. And Shaul promises, swears, makes an oath on Hashem. Chai Hashem im yikrech avon b'davar hazeh. He says that the Lord lives, nothing will happen to you. So he's Shaul, so he's able to say you won't get into trouble for it from like a royal perspective, but she's still breaking the Torah. And how can he make an oath on Hashem that it will be okay when he's breaking the word of Hashem? It's quite a sort of, again, shocking thing that he's able to do this. And there's a midrash that equates him to a woman having an affair And she swears on the life of her husband that everything's going to be okay to the person she's having an affair with. Okay, well, she's betraying her husband. How can she make an oath on her husband's life? That's kind of what Shaul is doing here. But again, we could add this to our list of shocking things that Shaul is doing that shows his very negative and confused state of mind at this time. Okay, that was the midrash, never mind. And I've already showed you the map. Okay, so she doesn't respond, but apart from saying, okay, who should I bring up? And Shaul says, bring up Shmuel Hanavi. Okay, so this is interesting. In Yud Bet here, it says, V'terei ha'isha et Shmuel, and the woman saw Shmuel, v'tiz'ach b'kol gadol, and she cried out with a great cry. ותאמר האישה אל שאול לאמור למה רמיתני ואתה שאול. And then she says, she cried out when she saw Shmuel, and then she says to Shaul, why did you deceive me? You're Shaul. Okay, we'll come back to what this is. And then again, Shaul says to her, what is it? What did you see? And she describes Shmuel, and he bows down. Shaul bows before Shmuel. Okay, so that's sort of what goes on there as she actually brings him back. And then we have here the response from Shmuel. Okay, Shmuel, who's been brought up from the dead, so to speak here. Okay, hold all your questions because you've all, I hope you've all got questions in your mind. What's going on? Did she actually bring Shmuel back? Do we really believe that that's even possible? Okay, I'm going to get to that soon. But what does Shmuel say? According to the woman, okay, Shmuel says, what have you done? Why on earth have you brought me back from the dead? Why are you disturbing me? He's angry. Shmuel is really angry. He's saying, Shaul, what have you done? And here, just where I've bolded it here, I want you to see this bolded bit in the first line. V'yomer Shaul tsar li ma'od. Shaul says, because I'm really scared. It's kind of like a little kid going to get their mum in the middle of the night and wake them up because they had a nightmare. Okay, and the little kid says, I'm really, really scared, Mummy. I need you. I need you to cuddle me. I need you to tell me it's going to be okay. Now, that's all right when it's your 5-year-old. Okay, but Shaul is a grown man. He's the king of Israel. He should be able to cope with this on his own. And here he just says to Shmuel, I needed you. I was scared. Okay, and God wasn't speaking to me. I tried, Shmuel. He says, I tried with the Urim and Tumim, and I tried by asking the other Nevi'im, and Hashem's not talking to me. So I came to you. And Shmuel says to him, God didn't respond to you because God is angry with you. And you shouldn't be shocked because you've made so many mistakes. And he responds, he reminds Shaul of the mistakes that he's made, and he's very, very harsh. And I just wanted to show you here the two main messages that I've highlighted in different colors to make it really clear, because like I said, we're not going through all the words inside. But in yellow here, he says two main messages to Shaul. Number one in the yellow, V'yikra Hashem et ha'mamlacha miyadecha v'yitna l'recha David, that Hashem has torn the kingship away from you and will give it to David instead. Okay. Number two in the blue, V'yiten Hashem gam et Yisrael amcha b'yad ha'plishtim. The Jewish people are going to lose this war to the Plishtim, this battle that you're about to fight tomorrow. It's going to end badly. And sorry, there's three things here. The third thing in the gray is, oh, and by the way, Machar ata uvincha ami, ubenecha ami. What does that mean? Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me, meaning you're going to die in battle tomorrow. You and both of your sons, or all of your sons are going to die in battle tomorrow, and you'll be reunited with me. So Shaul was so desperate that he even went to a witch to get this prophecy, and this prophecy was really not what he wanted. He wanted to be reassured, like the 5-year-old in the middle of the night that has a nightmare. They want to be told it's okay, everything's going to be all right, I'm here for you. That is not what Shaul got here. He's told some really drastic bad news. You're going to die tomorrow, your sons are going to die tomorrow, the Plishtim are going to be win in the battle, oh, and David's going to be king instead of you. Okay, not very good, not really what he wants to know. And Shaul, Shaul basically is terrified. He it's not clear if he like faints or he falls to the ground. We see I've bolded it for you. V'yara ma'od, nivhal ma'od, that he is greatly feared, he's greatly shocked. It's really not good. And actually, it's very interesting because then the witch turns to him and says, "You haven't eaten all day. Let me give you food." And we see here that he's exhausted. Probably he's not eaten. He's not drunk. He's definitely in a bad physical state as well as a bad emotional state. He ends up eating with her, and then him and his servants leave. Okay, and essentially that's the story. So I'm sure lots of questions, lots of thoughts going through your head. I don't know if hold on, I'm trying to stop the share. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions or say what they're thinking about the story at this point.
I was wondering did Hashem not speak to Shaul because he's in a state of depression? And isn't there an idea that Hashem doesn't speak to you? You can't access Nevuah when you're depressed. And maybe it's not because so much that he's doing everything wrong, but he just couldn't hear God's voice more than God not speaking to him.
Possibly. That could be one way of looking at it. That's true. I mean, certainly getting direct nevuah from Hashem is very dependent on your state of being and your state of mind and so on. But he also is happy to receive indirect communication, meaning, you know, if Natan Hanavi or Gad Hanavi or one of the other Nevi'im had received a prophecy and then come to Shaul with it, he'd have been quite happy with that, I think. It didn't necessarily need to be direct. But yes, that could be one way of looking at it. And certainly we have to remember that one of Shaul's biggest sins later on in his kingship is when he kills the Kohanim in Nov, quite violently, and it's really, he's such a tragic figure. I could give a whole series of shiurim on him, but really he goes and kills the Kohanim, and only you know, there is an opinion that why should Hashem speak to him anymore after he has disrespected and done such a terrible thing to his priests, to his Kohanim. And that could be, you know, one of the ways where, and in fact, Nechama Leibovitz writes in her book, where she has a whole essay where she talks about this story, and she says that once a student, I'm going to read what she said, her student once said, "Perhaps this is precisely Shaul's punishment. He was not worthy of receiving the prophecy from the Urim or Tumim anymore because he killed the bearers of the Urim and Tumim when he murdered the priests, the Kohanim in Nov. And so instead he has to be the only way he can have communication with God is through this dodgy, murky abode of the witch, and that's his punishment for that crime." So that's also another way of looking at it. And then, by the way, just before we go into sort of the content, the concepts, the final part of the shir, I just also wanted to point out that the next day they go to battle, the Jewish people do lose, and Shaul and his sons are killed. So everything that is said in this prophecy comes true. Okay, so that's also an important thing to know before we go into what does this all mean. Okay, so if I go back now to sharing my screen, I'm going to share with you kind of 4 different approaches to understanding this whole story, because essentially our main question is, what is going on? Do we really believe that a witch raised Shmuel Hanavi from the dead, who then gave this true divine prophecy, and it came true, so that kind of indicates it was true? How are we meant to understand all of this? So I'm going to share with you these 4 approaches. Number 1, yeah, it's true. This all happened. We believe in witchcraft, we believe in magic, we believe in sorcery, and that this witch raises Shmuel Hanavi from the dead, and he gives over this prophecy. This is we see this in the Gemara, in Sanhedrin 65b. It's also quoted by the Radak, by the Rambam. And if we look back to the story and we remember that she screamed when she raises Shmuel from the dead, then she screams. So why does she scream? Because that's when she recognizes Shmuel, she realizes that it must be the king in front of her, because Shmuel Hanavi would not have come back from the dead for anyone else than apart from the king. And therefore she realizes that she's very scared that she's in front of the king and she could be in trouble. And that's why she says to him, why have you deceived me? Why didn't you tell me you were Shaul from the beginning? Okay, and she's scared because she thinks her life is in danger for having done this in front of the king. Okay, but certainly this first approach is, yeah, it's a literal event, it all happened. The second approach is, no, we don't believe in witchcraft necessarily like this. This witch is a fake. She just makes money off people, you know, like someone who pretends they can read fortunes and charges £10 to read your palm and tell your future, you know. She's a fake. But God acted through her in order to give Shaul the prophecy. This is why she screams, because she's so shocked that Shmuel Hanavi comes up in front of her, because she's so used to faking it and making it up, that when she sees a spirit actually rise up from the dead, she's so shocked that she screams. Okay. And this is God acting through the witch, perhaps, as we said just before, in order to sort of punish Shaul, that the only way, because of all his sins and all the terrible things that he might have done, the only way he can communicate with God is through this strange, bizarre, underhand method of the witch. And that's why Hashem chooses to act through her. There's a lot of irony in this approach, obviously, that, you know, Shaul tried to get rid of the witches, and now here he is in desperation going to a witch, and so on. And again, it's a bit of an indication about the tragic status of Shaul at this time. Sorry, and this is quoted by Rosadia Gaon, is the proponent of this approach. Approach number 3 that I want to share with you is that the entire thing is made up by the witch. So the witch is a fake, and Hashem doesn't even act through her. She makes up the entire thing. Shaul doesn't see Shmuel literally rise up from the dead. She pretends to see him. She gives over the words of Shmuel, and she pretends this is what Shmuel is telling you. She makes up the entire thing. Okay? And this, I think, is probably the saddest or the most tragic approach, because what happens the next day? Shaul is in battle, and he's cornered. He sees his troops are losing, and he basically falls upon his own sword. He is not captured. He doesn't want to be captured by the enemy. He knows that that would be really, really bad. So he takes his own life rather than be captured. Now, you could say that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. He knows he's meant to die in the battle. So at this point, he says, okay, I'm going to take my own life because Hashem's told me last night that I'm meant to die today anyway. So I'm not going to fight it, and I'm going to take my own life. And if the whole thing was a fake, then that's really, really sad. And I think this I have to just stop for a moment and say this really reminds me of Macbeth as an English teacher, and I used to teach Macbeth when I lived in London. I don't get to teach Shakespeare anymore in Israel, but I taught Macbeth in London, and hopefully everyone here is familiar with the story of Macbeth, that he gets these prophecies, and then he believes them so much he kind of acts in order to make these prophecies come true. When maybe they were all made up in the first place, and if he hadn't acted on them, they wouldn't have happened, and he wouldn't have, you know, everything that ends up happening in the story wouldn't really have happened. So that kind of makes me think of this a lot. And then number 4, the approach of the Ralbag is that this was all entirely Shaul's imagination. He never left the camp. He never went to Endor. He never made that dangerous journey in the nighttime on the eve of battle. It was all in his mind. And when we say that he was in such a poor emotional state, and especially when we see at the end of the story that the witch tells him, you haven't eaten all day, you haven't drunken all day, perhaps he was in such a state of hunger and emotionally distressed, that he hallucinates or he makes it all up or he has a dream. It's unclear exactly, but the Ralbag says that he makes up the whole thing. And I want to point out that, by the way, if you look at the end of Shaul's life, the way it is portrayed in Sefer Divrei Yamim, so we know the Book of Chronicles often tells the same events that took place in other books of Tanakh, and sometimes gives a slightly different slant or adds extra information or changes things slightly from a different perspective. And there it says that it links Shaul's death to the fact that he went to this witch the night before, at the end of his life, for the trespass that he committed against the Lord, and that he consulted a ghost to seek advice. So clearly there's something bad and negative about what he does here, and that this links to his death. It says here at the end, so he had him killed and the kingdom transferred to David. Okay, so there's definitely something negative and something wrong about what he does here. So I'm not going to tell you how you should approach this, okay? We're coming up to the end of the shir. I just want to share, a few more, or a concluding idea, but I will say that I'm not going to tell you which one of these approaches is correct or right. I think the good news here is that there's something for everyone. So if you believe that there's no such thing as magic and this can't possibly have been true, then you have what to rely on here by going on what Rav Shmuel ben Chofni says, or even what the Ralbag said, that it was all in Shaul's imagination. There's different ways of approaching it. I think everyone can sort of think for themselves which approach they prefer. I just, to conclude, I want to share that Yael Ziegler says that this is really the last in a long series of mistakes made by Shaul, and his sins and his failures are what make him be really cut off from God and cut off from the kingship. And unfortunately, he carries on making bad choices. And at the end, Hashem didn't want to speak to him anymore. When he asked Hashem for guidance, what Shaul needed to do was listen to God's silence and just get on with it without asking and asking and asking. Because sometimes Hashem doesn't answer us. Sometimes the response is silence, and we have to be okay with that. And we have to continue on and not go to these negative, outlawed modes of practice. And that's why I said that this whole thing is about communication with Hashem. That really, here we have a king, a leader, who needs to, yes, communicate to Hashem and listen to Hashem, but also to try and do the right thing the whole time, and not try and decide on his own what might be right. No, he still needs to follow the laws, follow the Torah. And like I said, if Hashem isn't communicating with him, he just needs to accept that. And like I said, I think this is really highlighting what a true leader needs to do, to continue listening to Hashem fully in all circumstances, but also us in our own ways, we need to be listening to Hashem. And I just to show, sorry, going back to my slides, just to show one final source here, that we can even see why this is so important, because we can compare different verses in our chapter where Shaul does not listen to God. It says, I've highlighted it in yellow, that on the right-hand side, Shaul does not listen to Hashem, but instead he listens to the sorceress. Okay, Shaul listens to the witch instead of listening to Hashem, and that is really his downfall right at the end. But just to end on one note of optimism about Shaul, after he heard this negative prophecy, he could have said, that's it, I'm not going back to the camp, I'm running away, I'm taking my stands, I don't want to die in battle, I'm hiding. But actually, Shaul, in his in this final moment, okay, there's a midrash that shares this, but I'm not going to look at it inside, it's quite long. in essence, the fact that Shaul bravely goes to battle the next day, knowing that there is a prophecy that him and his kids and his sons are going to die, is a very, very brave thing. And I think that we need to remember also and kind of salute Shaul for his bravery on his last day, because that is also something that's very, very important to note, that he gives up his life here in defense of his country against the Philistine invaders. So what are my concluding ideas here? What are the concepts that we can take through with us into our lives today in 2025? Number one, this idea of needing to do the right thing, whatever it might, even sometimes we justify to ourselves why doing something different might actually be right. No, we need to follow the Torah, we need to listen to Hashem. And also that as a leader, as leaders, and I always say we're all leaders in our own ways, in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities. Every person has a way of being a leader and being an influencer on those around them. That again, we need to try and stick to the correct path, and try and do our best. So I hope that everyone enjoyed and found the shir interesting, and that I was able to shed light into what is quite a murky story in Tanakh. If anyone has any questions, I'm really happy to hear them, or comments, or people are able to reach out to me by email. I have an email, learnwithpnina@gmail.com, and if anyone wants the sources, I can share them as well. I'm happy to share either the PowerPoint or I have it as a source sheet, a PDF as well.
Oh, Pnina, sorry. Hello, Pnina. Hi. Very interesting. Thank you. Just we're meant to consider Shaul as a bit a tzaddik, but with all these things that he's done, how do we? It's really a bit difficult. I don't know.
It's an excellent question and a really difficult question to answer. Certainly, our galachat in sort of 1 minute. I would say that. And it's really also links to how we view characters in Tanakh. You know, are they all, certainly there are approaches that say that everyone in Tanakh, all our avot, all our ancestors were tzaddikim and therefore never did anything wrong. There are other approaches who say, no, sometimes they made mistakes, and actually we can learn a lot from their mistakes, and that makes them into far greater people because they make mistakes. I would like to say that certainly Shaul, he was a tzaddik in many ways, but he did not respond well in his leadership position. He made many mistakes, and the Tanakh shows he made mistakes. And I don't think anyone can say, you know, that killing all the Kohanim in Nov was allowed. So he certainly, I don't think he ends up as a tzaddik from that point of view. How we approach it, it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. Like I say, we could have a whole series of shiurim on Shaul HaMelech, but one of the things when you compare him, let's say, to David HaMelech, who also does make mistakes, but David owns up to them and does tshuva and rectifies his mistakes in an amazing way that really makes him into a tzaddik, which Shaul sadly does not manage to do.
Well, maybe he did this a shove at death, maybe, I don't know. But even in death, taking his life wasn't really what was meant to be, was it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Tough. It's very tough.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want next time, let me know when you're next to a share, because I'd like to tell him thank you so much. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, Pnina, I would like to say thank you so much for such an interesting and such an insightful share as always. And it's so helpful to see all your sources. It's so clearly presented. And thank you also for giving us the opportunity to do some learning for a refuah, in the merit of a refuah for Chana Malka Neshama Bat Aviva Dina. And as you say, for everybody.
Pleasure. Thank you for organizing, and it's lovely to learn Torah with you all again.
Thank you.
Please God will be able to again in the future, and everyone be well. And like I say, feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for arranging it all.
Okay, well, thank you, Marion.
Thank you so much. It was just really inspiring. We don't get to hear you often enough anymore.
Yeah, well, it's nice to share Torah again with you all. So thank you
No.
for arranging.
Um, if you decide to take up a new passion to Zoom your shiurim, do let us know.
Okay, I will do. It works quite well, the time difference actually to England. So
Because you
it
can
was-
put the children to bed.
yeah, although my daughter did wake up about half an hour before the show began.
Oh,
But luckily I got her back to bed. So
she had an intuition. There was something exciting going
yeah,
on.
exactly. Okay, well, we can be in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Be
Have a-
well. Good night.
Bye.